We are super excited about our new series, Look Where Am I?, that will take us through the next couple of months. Maybe you've seen the meme going around on social media that says something like this: the Wi-Fi went down today, I met my family. They seem like nice people. Well, the last 18 months has been a little bit like that. We've met people and found ourselves in places in different ways to normal. Perhaps we spent more time at home with our families. Many of us have talked about spending more time in our neighborhoods. We've visited our local shops. We've had more conversation and connection with our neighborhoods. We've become more aware of the place where we live, where we spend perhaps our waking, sleeping hours. We've seen the world through fresh or different eyes. We've become acutely aware of new people and new places because perhaps we've been stuck at home in our neighborhoods rather than traveling off to work or school or college or wherever it might be. And we've also had a different perspective on the people and the places where we would normally go and the people that we would normally meet because we've been unable to meet them. We've seen where we are placed in different aspects of our lives in different ways. This new series is an invitation for us to look afresh at those places through God's eyes. An invitation to see afresh the significance of where we are placed. We've called it, Look Where Am I? Look where am I is the kind of phrase that we might have put a long time ago on a postcard, sending back to home a picture of the beach or the mountain or the city where we were staying. Today, perhaps more likely, we put it on an Instagram post. Look where am I? Expressing something about the place where we are at in that moment. Look where am I? And it might be a picture of a great beautiful landscape or a mountain peak. Look where am I? It might be a favorite restaurant and a meal that you've looked forward to eating. Look where am I? It might be an adventure that you're about to take part in, something you're going to do for the first time. In different ways, we communicate to others about the place where we are in that moment. Look where am I? As we think about where we are right now, this series is an invitation for us to look where we are and to see it afresh through God's eyes. To see the beauty of where we are, to see the adventure of where we are, to see the opportunity and excitement of where we are, to see the joy that's to be found where we are. And sometimes we're in places that we don't think are beautiful or adventurous or exciting, but to see those places as well from a new and different perspective. Maybe you're in a place right now and you wish you weren't in that place. It's our longing and our prayer that we will discover even in those places a new sense of perspective and a renewed sense of purpose. That whilst it doesn't take away some of the struggle of the place that we are in, it will give us a new and fresh perspective, which will give us energy to take us through it and purpose to live by. Look where am I? A journey of discovery to see afresh what God sees about the place and the places where we are right now. All of this comes from the book of Genesis. In fact, we'll see it right through the scriptures as we go through this series. But you would expect the first book of the Bible to introduce some major themes that are contained within the whole book. It's like the introduction. It's like the beginnings. It kind of sets the scene. And you will know from our studies in the book of Genesis that with the two great characters of Abraham and Joseph, the book of Genesis deals with some of those big issues. God called Abraham into relationship with him, into a covenant, an unbreakable bond. That's a big theme of the Bible, isn't it? That God calls us into a relationship with him, an unbreakable bond that nothing in all creation can separate us from the love of God. And the second part of the book of Genesis, this first book in the Bible, is all about the story of Joseph. That God used Joseph to take responsibility to be his person at the right moment in the world. Relationship that God calls us into, we see through the life of Abraham, and the responsibility to live for God in the world, to represent him in the world through the life of Joseph. We call that the covenant and kingdom double helix, the DNA of what it means to live for God, to be in relationship with him, and to take responsibility to represent him in the world. But of course, there are other big themes that are introduced to us in the book of Genesis as well, that then get taken through the rest of the Bible. And one of those big themes is the importance of place. That where God has placed us, or where we find ourselves placed, has a purpose in God's agenda. The reason that the reading that we heard just a few minutes ago is that calling on the life of Abraham to go from your country and your kingdom, to leave one place and go to another place, the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. In other words, you're going to go to a place, and that place has purpose attached to it. In that place, I will do something in and through you. Leave that place, go to this place, I will be with you, and I will do something great with you in that place. That's the story of Abraham. And so he got up, it says, and he left. He went to a new place, and in that new place, God would give him a purpose. Then again, in the life of Joseph, it's quite a different kind of story, isn't it? Joseph doesn't get led by God in quite the same way. In fact, we might find it easier to relate to the story of Joseph. Circumstances overwhelm Joseph. His brothers hate him. His brothers attack him. His brothers imprison him. His brothers then sell him in slavery. He then spends a long time in a foreign country all on his own. He then gets falsely accused and put into prison for a long time in that foreign country, all the time separated from his father who thought that he was dead. There's nothing about the circumstances of Joseph's life, it would appear to us, that are good or come from God's heart. In fact, Joseph's story is a story of earthly circumstances overwhelming him. Earthly circumstances overwhelming us. Nevertheless, we discover at the end of Genesis that even though Joseph was in this place that he hadn't wanted to be in, and he got there in a way he hadn't wanted to go, and to be honest, he'd got there in a way that God would not have intended for him, that God would not have desired for one of his own children to go through all those experiences. Nevertheless, it says, even in that place, God had a plan. And we read about how God was able to raise Joseph up to become a senior politician, a prime minister in the land of Egypt at a time of great world famine, and play a crucial role in seeing many people saved during a global famine. And so God used Joseph in that place, even though it wasn't a place that Joseph himself would have chosen. And even though he got to that place through far from godly or pleasant means, overwhelmed by circumstances. And then let's just tip over, leaving the book of Genesis, into the second book of the Bible, the book of Exodus, which tells the story of God moving his people from one place to another place in order that they might be a light and a blessing to the nations of the world. So again, this big idea that every place has a purpose. Every place has a purpose because God has always got a plan. And I find that so encouraging for our lives today and so encouraging, especially if the place that we're in right now is not a place that we would have chosen or desired to be in, even though it's not what we would have chosen. Even though the means of us getting to that place might not be the path of God's best blessing for us, nevertheless, every place has a purpose because God always has a plan. God absolutely knew what would happen to Joseph, so he already had a plan for Joseph in that place. God knows exactly what will happen to you. So God already has a plan for you in that place. So whether we're in places that we've chosen to be in, whether we're in places that we wish we weren't in, God has a plan. And that's the foundation, the biblical foundation that lies at the heart of our series over these next 8 weeks or so. That we might discover that God has a plan wherever we are placed. If you are placed in a work team, in a job, in a career, or in a school, or a classroom, or a form, or a university year, or a social society at your university, God has a plan for you there. If you are placed in a friendship group, God has a plan for you. If you're placed around people that seem difficult and hostile right now, God still has a plan for you there. If you are placed in a marriage or in a family, or if you're single right now, God has a plan for you in that place, in those places. If you are in a neighborhood, in a village, in a street, God has a plan for you there. If you are in a gym or a sports club or a hobby group or a social community, God has a plan for you there. If you're in a church, in this church, if you're in one of our communities, if you're in any other grouping, an accountability group, a prayer group, an accountability relationship, a discipling gathering, a huddle, God has a plan for you there. That's the big idea, that we would discover in all the places where we are the beauty, the adventure, the joy, the opportunity, the excitement, the transformation that comes from seeing those places with fresh eyes, with God's eyes, that wherever we are, He has a plan. And as we discover it, as we step into it, we will flourish in new and different ways. And we will know what Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it in abundance, as we discover that God already has a plan. Hey, look where I am.